Hello, my fellow survivors of borderline personality relationship. This video and this channel is intended for non-borderlines who have been in a romantic relationship with somebody who has borderline personality disorder. And so everything I say is from that perspective, as I am also a survivor of being in a romantic relationship with a borderline. If you are somebody who has borderline personality disorder, this channel might not be for you, but you're certainly welcome here, and you're welcome to listen to what I have to say. Bear in mind, I am not a therapist and I am not a psychologist. It is not my intention to try and accurately diagnose or cure or do anything like that. My only intention primarily is for my own health and happiness and recovery. And this channel has been here for a while, and I am seeing that a lot of other people are really benefiting from it. So I'm going to keep putting this channel here and talking about things. So bottom line is, if you are somebody with borderline personality disorder and you're in therapy, maybe this can be helpful for you, simply so that you can hear the experience of what it's like for non-borderlines to be in a relationship with somebody if they truly have borderline personality disorder. All right, so my last video was sharing 6 months out, and it gives you an idea of how far emotionally I have, I have recovered from that. I'm actually now doing the math, and in terms of the actual complete end, where there has been no contact since then, it has been January, February, March, April, May. It's been 5 months. It's, if you add the last month where there really wasn't anything going on, maybe, but the truth is that I was still in it. And it was, actually, I take that back. Anyway, about that time. Anyway, you can see, it's just that, the whole linear time falls apart when you're with a borderline. And the borderline that I was in, she couldn't deal with linear time. One of the things that she did, I'm looking back on it now, hindsight is 20/20. And the thing is, she knows. She probably knows that she's borderline, but is unwilling to get treatment and is unwilling to face it. And whatever other fears she might have about it, which are understandable. But when we were first together, we started making these plans. And you've done this before when the borderline is idolizing you, and you start making these plans for your life together, which never get done. They never come to fruition. But in the beginning, you don't know that. You don't know, especially like me, if you knew nothing about true borderline personality disorder, you knew nothing about it. I didn't understand when somebody sits there and is making plans with you about their life that they're completely incapable of following through. It's not a question of, the kind of person who is lying to you and pretending to put something together just to string you along, and then whatever they're going to do, however they're going to lie to you or betray you. That wasn't the case for her. She absolutely had every intention, I'm sure, in her mind. She thought this was it. This is when everything's going to change, and he's going to be the one that's going to fix me and help me and all that. And she said, we need to record this. And I was okay with it, but I was still all wrapped up in just being I found the perfect woman. And she had said, no, this is a spiritual thing that we're going to do right now, and I'm going to record. And what she did was she recorded us talking about our plans, and she specifically went through the list and had me go through the list of what we were going to do and how we were going to work together on this project and on this project. And I could tell there was something about it that she wasn't being, that she was skirting around, and she was saying, no, this is like a magical spiritual thing we're going to do. When in reality, now I know what was going on is that she knew at some point that she was going to split on me. She knew that it was going to happen. And so she was recording what we were doing so that when she split, she could be directed back to the video so that she could watch it and then be reminded, because also she had horrible memory. And she said something like, I have bad short-term memory. But, you know, a non-borderline having bad short-term memory is not the same as a borderline that completely, totally forgets what had happened and the linear time in which things have happened. And she was like that. She would literally not know what day it was. And if I tried to talk about something we said, or, you know, something she had said 2 days ago or on such and such date, like if I threw out a date, she would get completely confused. There was a couple of times where she split on me, and there was something that I said in response that must have, you know, because I'm pretty good at not getting upset, and I'm pretty good at saying, wait a minute, what is you saying here? And the feeling behind that is this, and remember when you said this, and now you're saying this, and it's not making sense, it's not lining up. There's been a couple of times where she started to split on me and started to say, I know what you're doing to me, you're doing, and then I said whatever I said, and she goes, oh yeah, okay, yeah, now I remember now, okay, you're right. And what it was is that she was actually trying to stop herself from splitting. And, you know, the deception was that she wasn't honest enough with me to say, I have a real serious problem, you know, I have a mental issue. You know, of course, had she been in therapy and was willing to do that. But the point is that I'm looking back on it now, 5 months later, with no, I mean, I can't even try and muster up an attachment to her. And I'm being honest with you. I don't have any resentment towards her. I'm not angry with her. You know, if I think about her and I think about, you know, of course, you know, the fantasy of if she were to contact me and want to get back together, what would I say to her? You know, even when the normal thing of wanting to stand up and say, you have any idea what you did to me? You know, when that thing tries to kick in, it's just like it doesn't have any fuel behind it, because that in order for that to work, you have to operate from the assumption that the person meant to harm you and knew what they were doing and had planned it out. And we're talking about people who really don't have the ability to do any kind of impulse control. And they really do go insane, and they will in a moment go from seeing you either as you are or as they want you to be, to seeing you as something that absolutely does not and has never existed. And that's the insanity of it. It is a mental disease. If you are with somebody that has borderline personality disorder, or you've gotten out, or you're trying to get your power back, it's incredibly important that you understand, I mean, that they are mentally ill, which means that they do not have an accurate gauge of reality. And there's no, you know, there's no way to predict when they will lose contact with reality. There were other things that I've come to realize that she might have been even far more mentally ill than I suspected. She mentioned things that I look back on now. I'm not going to get specific, but she mentioned things in context of that sounded like meditational experiences, which looking back on it, she was disconnecting from reality. I forget what that's called. Where there's a psychological term where they completely disconnect from reality. And this was she would talk about this a lot, and I took it at the time as being symbolic or being something else. Of course, under the my own rosy glasses of seeing her with my codependent projection on her. Looking back on it now, had I not had that, I would have gone, wow, that sounds like a serious mental disorder, what she's talking about. So, what's interesting is that those are the things I'm remembering. And because I don't have an attachment to her, and because I honestly, if she were to come back in my life, I honestly wouldn't be able to find anything that would connect me to. I mean, there's nothing that I want from her. The delusion that I, can fix her and help her, the projection of wanting to heal and to fix her, that has left. And now, with the time that's gone, I'm seeing what was really there. There were some other things that I didn't share about in this video series that, really aren't. I mean, because we're starting to get into something spiritual here, which, you can't go by that when it comes to things like mental health. You can't use spiritual intuition and experiences in that way for the most part, because for the most part, when you're dealing with that kind of stuff in relationships, you're dealing with your own narcissism, you're dealing with your own projection, your own fears. And so, we spiritualize a lot of our own, garbage. Even with a even with a healthy person, relationships for the first 9 months are primarily projection and transference. So it takes about 9 months before you really get to see past your own delusions and desires and attachments and all that, and actually see somebody for who they are. That's why romantic relationships, just among healthy people, usually goes through a crisis at right around 6-9 months. That's the reason. And then you get past that, and then you actually learn to love the person for who they are in a healthy relationship. So because it's been this long, it's amazing how much of the I mean, I have to remind myself that there were periods where, it was all the most amazing thing in the world. But now that I have the time and I look back on it, those times where she was idolizing me, I forget the word now. There's devaluation and is it idealization? She was idealizing me, and she was love bombing me. What's interesting is I'm not remembering those, which tells me they weren't real. But when she first contacted me online, something in me became really terrified. And I don't get this kind of terrified. I won't get into why, but I'm not one of those people that gets this kind of terror, this kind of fear. And when she first contacted me, something in me became really frightened of her. In fact, physically, I had physical pain, sciatic pain and all kinds of other stuff, which in me, when that gets triggered, it means that I have unconscious, unresolved issues. I've got something going on, some kind of conflict going on in the unconscious realm. And that stayed and got worse throughout the whole time with her. In fact, physically, I've one of the things that's happened after my first marriage, which was very dysfunctional, I had all kinds of physical pain issues tendonitis, back pain, neck pain, back spasms. My knee was very swollen. I had horrible sciatica. And getting out of that marriage and then going and doing the things that I loved doing and making myself happy, I cured myself 100% of all of that sciatica and all of the tendonitis. And so it started coming back when my borderline, now ex, first contacted me. When we started getting together, on in terms of my conscious experience, I was getting love bombed, and she was the ultimate, but my body was telling me a different story. My knee was starting to swell up, and I couldn't, I was having a hard time walking, and I was in a lot of pain. And other pain issues started coming back. And so I was very confused because the love bombing was happening. But as I look back on it now, even during the idealization phase, when the love bombing was happening, it wasn't ever comfortable. It wasn't ever like the love hits you and sinks and you go, oh my God, I'm loved. There was always this fear, and there was nervousness and doubt and constant self analysis of, am I making her happy right now? Am I making her happy? Because the splitting happens. This is the thing, I've said this before, but on the large scale, you see these big love bombs and then splitting, and then love bombs and splitting, idealization and splitting. But the reality is that at any given moment, the borderline, at least mine, was constantly going up and down. It was never, there was always, the splitting was happening, micro splitting. We could call it micro splitting, micro devaluation. And so that was getting in enough while she was doing the external manipulative love bombing. While she was doing that, all the other devaluations were still happening on an unconscious level. The micro splitting was happening on an unconscious level that I never felt comfortable, ever. And I remember at one point when the first big split happened and when she broke it off. She broke it off, called the next day. We had a great emotional connection. She was able to gaslight me into saying it was my fault and I did it, and then she split on me again, and back and forth. And then there came a point where I hadn't talked to her for a week. She had, broken it off with me for a week or something. And in the beginning, I was kind of smart because the first time it happened, she wanted to get back together. She wanted to talk to me, and I said, I'm not ready to talk to you. So I hadn't fully gotten completely pulled in, which of course makes you only that much more desirable to them. But there was a point there when the phone rang, and I hadn't talked to her for a week, and I was going through hell, that pit in your stomach, because you're addicted to them, and that addiction within you, and you couldn't function because of the addiction within you about them. And what are they thinking, and what are they doing, and what did you say, and what did they say, and all that. Even though I was consciously like saying, trying to push away from her, all of that still was going on inside. The phone rang, and it was her, and I could see that it was her. And the anxiety that I felt, I can't remember ever feeling this kind of just, this warfare, this tug of war in me. Because, in that instant when you imagine, okay, what happens if we get back together? Real crazy, horrible fear and anxiety took over me. Okay, what happens if she's calling because she's going to now, end it even more? The anxiety, I became aware of, oh my God, I'm in hell. I'm in hell. I had no control. Of course, I picked up the phone, and of course, she hoovered me back in. And of course, I said yes. And then I was in hell. It was horrible. And so these are the things I'm remembering. I'm talking about this now I'm getting feedback from people that it's helping them. And what I want to be able to help give the non-borderline who's seeking to recover or to separate is to give you the awareness that they are in fact extremely mentally ill. My experience was that if I were to spiritualize the feelings that I was having, it would have been that the devil was coming for me. And I'm not saying that hyperbolically. I mean, I mean it. That the kind of, when you hear about, horror movies when the devil is coming for you, the devil who's going to come and feast on your soul and torture you, who's going to tempt you with all of the things that, feed all of your weaknesses and your needs and all of that, all of your unresolved issues, and at the same time feed on your soul. That was the feeling that I had. There were actual things that happened that if I wanted to, I could definitely say that, the portals of hell had opened. I mean, one time, there are just times if I shared with you some of the things that happened, you would think that spiritually there was some real dark, evil presence that was involved in this. Now, I'm not making that. But if I wanted to go down that route, I would say that borderline personality disorder is a portal to, negative entities and demons. The only thing that's important about it, that's how it felt. So, even though I am a spiritual man, I'm not going to make that kind of, I'm not going to over spiritualize something and take my own responsibility and my own awareness out of it. The point of that is that at the very least, on an unconscious level, my psyche knew this was really bad news and you have no protection. You have no protection from what's coming. And that's what, and I have no anger, I have no pain, I have no unresolved issues. I don't have any sadness or, what she did this to me or that to me. I don't have any of that anymore because I do have a therapist that I work with, because I have been in group therapy for, 20 plus years, because I have been in 12-step work for almost 40 years. And because when I was able to finally, get out of this relationship, actually she ended it, but I then closed the door, made sure that she would never contact me again. And I made that clear to her that she was not welcome to contact me again for any reason. When I did that, I then talked to, my therapist and my 12-step support system, and I did the 4th step on her. So if you know anything about the 4th step in 12-step work, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, and you are a codependent, and if you've been with a borderline, you are without a doubt a codependent by definition. I don't care what any of you say. People want to say, I'm not codependent, no. If you've been with a borderline, you are by definition a codependent. So you should go to Codependence Anonymous and find somebody to take you through the 12 steps of CODA. And do a 4th step, which is a resentment inventory. You can call it an expectation inventory, however you want to call it. But that was definitely what cured me. That's what made me go, whoa, that's my part. That's what I did right there. I was trying to get her to be my fiance who passed away and left me, in this state of trauma. Oh my gosh, she's exactly like my extremely, who knows what my mother had. My mother may have been, partially borderline or, had borderline tendencies or something. But my mother was, had some really serious issues. And oh my God, now I see. Oh, wow. What I thought was happening was not happening. It was all my own transference and my projection. And then after having worked through that, I'm seeing for what was really happening, which is interesting because normally in a romantic relationship, even bad ones, ones that go wrong, the real moments of love that you have, you remember. And I'm thinking of my ex-wife. My ex-wife, my ex-wife had her problems. She had borderline tendencies. She was not borderline, but she had some borderline tendencies. She'd been sexually abused, and I was the healer and all that stuff. But there were real times and real moments of actual love and actual connection and actual partnership. And I remember those, and I remember them fondly. I remember all the other stuff, and so there's that part of me that goes, "Wow, I would never want to be with her again." But I don't. There wasn't that feeling of I was with a demon. That wasn't there, and the parts where we really did connect and love each other, that was real. And I think back on those things with joy and with happiness and with fondness. I don't have any of those with the borderline, which is something because I was telling everybody, she's the one. This is my new soulmate. This is the next soulmate. She's going to take over where my soulmate left off. My soulmate was a partner that I had for a couple of years who passed away, and she really was my soulmate. And so that's a lot for me to say that the borderline was that. So to go from that extreme to the extreme I have now, which is I have no malice, I have no anger, I have no pain, I have no hurt, I have none of that left in me, and I can't look back on any of it with fondness. Like there wasn't any real connection, is what I'm saying. And when I do bring to mind those times that I thought, there was real connection going on, what I'm remembering now and feeling was that coming from me was a lot of deep insecurity and a lot of deep childhood need. There wasn't any love on either end. It's not a judgment. It's just the reality. It was cotton candy. It wasn't actual food. So my point here is to help you understand that whatever it is you think you had with the borderline was not. It sounds like a very extreme statement, and borderlines may be hurt by that or not understand it or take it personally, and I can understand why they would. But that's definitely the fact of the matter. If you are a borderline, let's see, how can I say this? What I've heard borderlines say, and I keep getting this feeling I got to really be careful. So you know what? I'm not here to help borderlines. I don't think I'm the proper person. So I'm just going to stop myself before I go any further. Because borderlines are people, and they have real feelings, and their feelings are real, and their feelings are genuine. And so what I was about to say actually would not be, it would not be nurturing and helpful for you, so I won't. But it is helpful perhaps to hear from a non-borderline what the experience that we have, and to learn how to do whatever it is you need to do to heal and grow, and I hope you do. To non-borderlines, again, the kindest thing you can do, if the first thing that's coming to mind for you is you need to be there for your borderline, you need to help them, you need to love them, you need to save them. You can't. It's impossible. You may not know that right now, but if you can trust what I'm saying, it's impossible. There was one person on this channel that responded to me who was a non-borderline, who was in a relationship with a borderline. And his response was, well, maybe it wasn't true love. Because here's what I found. What I found is that if you can, something about helping the borderline deal with something about their splitting and to not react, and if you can be there with true love, and if they truly love you, then you'll get through it. The response that I didn't give that person was, talk to me in a year. Let's see if in a year you're saying the same thing. Because it sounded like delusion to me. It sounded like the codependent who is in the delusion of, yeah, but I really am the one that can fix her or him. Because I believed that. I believed I was the one. That yeah, all those other boyfriends that she talked about, oh, of course, but I'm, I'm the one. I've got all of this healing behind me. I've got all this love, and I'm going to be able to do for her what they weren't able to do. And I say that now and looking back on how insane that is. Knowing what I know, hindsight is 2020. But bottom line is, they are mentally ill, and it's not, a borderline hears that and they think that I'm saying that they're crazy. It's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that they've been damaged at perhaps from birth. The damage and the trauma that they went through, whether it's from abandonment or abuse or confusion, is so traumatic and was so traumatic to their development, to their mental, emotional, and identity development. The damage that they experienced was so traumatizing and so damaging to them that there literally is parts of their brain and parts of their identity and parts of their, what you carry with you all the time that you take for granted. Those big chunks are missing. And if their mental illness is anything like some of the things that I've dealt with in my own recovery, there's going to be huge holes in them that will never be healed. The best that they'll be able to do after years of dedicated therapy where they are consciously aware that, oh my gosh, I have a major mental illness and I need help. I need to completely change how I think and how I view and how I react and how I respond. If they have that ability and it's honest and they do that for years, if my understanding is correct, there are going to be huge parts of them that will never, that will just be missing. And the best they'll be able to do is have like a Band-Aid that will sort of keep it kind of connected, like, duct tape. But there will still always be times they will always be splitting on you and, devaluing you. And the best they'll be able to do is just not take action on that impulse. And then what happens after that, I don't know, because I'm not a borderline and I don't know. But you need to understand that it would probably take a decade before you would even be able to begin to have a relationship. And it would mean that they would need to be single and not in a relationship, probably for, a very long period of time. And, it's not your job to fix them, number one. And, is that something you really want to do? Again, I'm just coming from my perspective. I know a guy who married one and had 2 kids with one. And as much as I love and respect him, I would never want to be in his place. I would never want to have gone through what he's gone through and what he is currently going through. So, again, I'm babbling on and on and on. My goal is to help you understand that they are not only, it's not that they're crazy. That's not a helpful word. It's that they are broken. They are broken. There's parts of their humanity that were never developed or were damaged beyond repair. And if they are untreated, they will damage you severely. That is a fact. They may not want to, maybe they will, because there's a whole spectrum going from narcissism to, whatever. And there are some narcissistic borderline personality disorders out there There are, and if somebody is borderline, they have, something like that. Somebody, what do they call it? Like vulnerable narcissism. So they are going to do things to you that narcissists do, and they are going to be extremely damaging to you, and they are going to the end result of the actions of their illness. And I'm not blaming them personally, but the end result of the consequences of their actions that's coming from their illness is that they will completely, if you give them enough time, completely, totally destroy your self-worth. You will, at the end, have none. And when you get to that place, when you have no self-worth, they will split on you forever. There will never come a point where they will go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that to you. I'm so sorry. As long as they're not in treatment, that will never happen. And you've been with them for months. You've been with them for years. If you don't believe me, read some of the comments here from people who were in, marriages with borderlines, and then after years of going up and down on the Ferris wheel, they finally got to the point where they completely, totally devalued their partner to such a degree that there was nothing left for them to devalue. And when that happened, then they split completely, blamed them, did sometimes really destructive, even violent things to end it. That is where you will end up. There will never come a point where things will turn around and they will look at themselves and look at you and fix it and learn and grow. If they're still with you, it's because there is still some self-worth within you that they have not fed off of. Bear in mind, when I say they're feeding off of your self-worth, it's because they've never had any. It's not their fault. They are broken and damaged to such a degree that they are incapable not only of creating any self-worth, but any self-worth that you give them is completely, totally temporary. It's it's just something that hits them. They taste it, they feel it, but imagine if you didn't have a stomach and you could taste food and chew it, but then when you swallowed it, it would just fall out of your neck. That's what happens. So if you're waiting for all of your love that you've been giving them over the years to build up in them to the point where it finally gives them the ability to give back to you, it'll never happen because they're broken. They do not have the ability to create an identity, and they do not have the ability to truly have empathy, and they do not have the ability to have gratitude. It's not their fault. You need to understand they don't have it. Only if they get into therapy, as I understand, and they do the work. And the truth is that a lot of them get into therapy, but either because they're so damaged and or because they're not truly able to stay sincere in it for a long enough period of time. Because the same thing happens in therapy. They split on therapy as well. They idealize the therapist and then split on the therapist. So it's very hard to treat them. So unless you find one that's able, for whatever reason, to have it and work through it, what you can bank on, what will happen, definitely without a doubt. And I think the guy who made the comment that, well, this is true love and I have true love for her and she truly loves me and I'm doing this and helping her with that, even for him. The reality is the time will come when she will devour whatever his self-worth is, and when his self-worth is gone, they will toss you aside like a empty husk. And they will destroy the connection to such a degree that it can never be repaired. But the point is that there is a real tendency for you to be damaged beyond repair also. And it takes a lot for me to say that. I don't say that lightly. because I'm somebody, I work, what I do for a living as a spiritual counselor is I help people and I give people, you can overcome anything, you can be anything. But I'm telling you that I've seen some of the effects that somebody who really is a codependent and very sick and stays with a borderline for a long period of time, there is the real danger that they can destroy and consume your self-worth to a point where you can't recover. So, the only reason I'm saying that to you is not to take away hope, but so that you can say, you know what, I have to get out. The kindest thing you can say to a borderline, and the kindest thing you can do to a borderline, because if you want to help them, the kindest thing you can do is say, I love you. And this relationship is not healthy for me. For my own health, this has nothing to do with you, but for my own health, I have to leave. I can't have any contact with you until you've been in therapy with a therapist who is qualified to treat borderline personality disorder for a year. If you can do that, twice a week for a year, and you still want to get back together with me, give me a call. You think that's ever going to happen? Do you think they're going to do that? Do you think they're going to call you? With me telling you that, does it make you want to go, no? But if I say this, do you find yourself going through fear because a year to a borderline is like 1,000 years. A year to a borderline, they can go through 5, 6, 7, 8 people, chew them up and spit them out. They can be, they've cheated on you however many times. They've lied to you, manipulated, and a year, do you really think that they have the ability to last a year and then come back to you? If you're having those thoughts and those thoughts are making you go, no, I would never say that to her because you're too afraid, it's because you're a codependent and because their love for you isn't real. Because they're not capable. All right, so I babbled long enough. Anyway, some people have reached out to me and asked me if I would consider doing some kind of, paid counseling or something like that. I'm not a therapist. I do a lot of counseling, spiritual counseling, but I don't know that I'm qualified to do that. I will continue to think about it if you guys really want to. Leave in the comments here that you would potentially like that, and I'll think about it and meditate on it. My first instinct is that I don't think I'm qualified to do that. I'm just another person like you that's recovering. But there is recovery. If you go to therapy and if you work those 12 steps from CODA, especially that 4th step, if you can work that 4th step thoroughly, which is about resentments, find somebody, the 4 columns, who, what, why, what it affects, and my part. If you know what I'm talking about, that's the one you got to do. Do that one and then work through the rest of the steps with somebody who's gone through them. You can be in a state of recovery like I am, and I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time with non-borderline women. I'm having a really wonderful, beautiful, romantic, sexual time with normal people who, show up and say what, do what they say they're going to do, and you can believe what they say and, and feel good about yourself. You can do that. You can recover if you're willing to do the work. But I'll keep coming back and I'll keep sharing my experience. So with that, I'll stop babbling. Thanks so much. And, I wish you all the best.